let me bring into, because escaping any mode, I don't want to have our listeners think that it's specifically about autism. I find it fascinating because of the work that we do, and it certainly fits what we're doing. So I want to bring in the autism or neurodiversity piece. I mentioned before we started recording, I've got an article in front of me, the Journal of Neurology, Psychiatry, and Brain Research, and the article is by Dr. David Rowland, and this was written in 2020. And one of the things that he wanted to kind of talk about were specific areas in the brain that are affected by autism. And so I'm going to mention the four, which you have kind of thrown around, that are pretty important in enemy mode. And then we'll kind of draw towards, so what would a relationship situation be like with some of these differences in brain structure? So the first one is the singular cortex gyrus. The singular gyrus is the part of the brain which focuses attention. In autism, the singular gyrus appears to keep the person's attention trapped in the left frontal lobe, which creates a perpetual state of hyperfocus. The left frontal cortex in the autistic left frontal lobe, the alpha frequencies, 8 to 12, I think that's hertz, predominates over beta, which is the exact opposite of a neurotypical developing brain. Higher alpha frequencies in the left brain appear to be compensating for the inability to access creativity and intuition from the right brain. Then in the right frontal cortex, there are normal brainwave activity in the right frontal lobe with alpha frequencies predominant over beta. However, the neural networks are suspected to be underdeveloped, and the autistic person can be completely unaware of anything that is even happening in his or her right frontal lobe, which is the place where emotions and social connectivity are experienced. And then finally, the amygdala. The amygdala plays a central role in the expression of emotions, especially fear. And if you have a dysfunctional or underdeveloped singular gyrus, this prevents the autistic person sometimes from feeling emotions, access emotions, or being able to articulate emotions. And then the amygdala is kind of calling the shots and giving the information about the information and sensory input that's coming in. So those four pieces that I mentioned, which this article says are pretty important things that are different in the autistic brain, then what does that mean in a relationship with someone whose brain has those four issues that can be challenged or underdeveloped?
Yeah, that's a rather common, not just with autism, but with a variety of relational problem spectrum people. You know, there's a lot of different ways to get into relational problems, but the typical thing is getting over-focused on, for instance, some people get over-focused on rules and expectations and how this thing's supposed to happen without noticing or feeling connected to the other person, which is that right prefrontal cortex that is, they say they're assuming it's underdeveloped. It's at least underactivated. And so if your cingulate cortex on the right side is always overactivated, it's not passing through the signals to the right prefrontal cortex, and so it is not getting the workout it needs. And what the right prefrontal cortex says, here's what's important to me relationally. And that's sort of missing from it. So you're focused on the problems, but you're not noticing what's important to you relationally. The thing about it is that not noticing does not mean it isn't important to you. And so people in that configuration can still have a lot of pain internally from not feeling connected and having joyful relationship with other people. So the longing doesn't go away just because it never seems to work. And so then, because of that push inside, like I really want something to work, your left brain says, okay, we'll just make some rules for this, and then we'll make everybody follow those rules. But the problem is relationships don't run well on rules at all. So there's an interesting thought that's circulating way in the background of some of the research on the autistic spectrum that I can throw in here. And I'll start with a study that was recently done in was published out of Israel on first-time fathers. And they found out that what happens at first-time fathers is that they lose brain tissue in their right brain. And that sounds like a bad idea to us, but really the brain has this process in which it leaves all kinds of options open. But when you get good at things, it discards options it doesn't need, and it actually trims the brain. And during pregnancy, the right brain is supposed to get a very severe trimming in order to be different from the left brain that doesn't get that trimming. That's the big difference between the two. So you're actually, during pregnancy, growing a smaller right brain than you would otherwise, because it's supposed to be more specialized. And it appears as though people on autistic spectrum didn't get the same amount of trimming, or possibly they had better prenatal nutrition that caused their right brain to grow faster than the brain could trim. And so they've actually got overgrowth on the right side that makes it hypersensitive, hyperactivated. It runs too fast and too loud rather than not being sensitive enough. And when the back of your brain is running too loud, the front of your brain has a hard time getting a chance to practice and go on. And whether or not that's how it develops or not, there's a lot of counterintuitive things about the way the brain works. But no matter where you have an injury, the part of the brain that will respond the worst, whether it's to chemicals or heavy metals or stuff like that, it's always a cingulate that takes the hit. The cingulate is sort of the place where everything comes together in the brain. It's not necessarily that's where it's done, but that's where it's unified into one way of thinking. And so if anything is coming in too loud or missing, the cingulate is the part that takes the hit. And that's what we're noticing that's going on for whatever whole variety of different causes. But what you need to do then is you have to slow the interaction down, quiet it down so it comes back into the range the brain can work at. And now you have to start practicing the joy and quiet alternate till you can build some trust and exercise. So much as you would do, rehab on a muscle or a limb that's been broken, you'd have to take your exercise down to what that part of your body can handle right now, and then slowly build from there. And the problem we have with people is that if someone gets in enemy mode, it's really contagious. So if you get an enemy mode reaction, it's really hard not to come back with some kind of enemy mode. And the most common one is, someone gives you simple enemy mode, and to get your attention, you give them stupid enemy mode in return. And that's obviously not going to get you out of the problem we're talking about. We have to go back to say, let's get into a zone where we can actually enjoy interacting, and let's not push it too far, and build from there. And that seems to work. It just takes a lot of practice, but it's better than fighting.
And those two enemy modes are what I see most common, unless I'm working with someone who maybe has narcissistic traits or something else going on. That's right. The third one you talk about, which is intelligent enemy mode.
That'd be right, yes. Mm-hmm.
Will you talk us through that one? You have a whole book on that one. Let me plug that one. That's Pandora's Problem, which I haven't read that one yet. But give us the overview of intelligent enemy mode.
Yeah, well, in intelligent enemy mode, since I anticipate the world is going to be against me, I create artificial self, a sort of image of myself that I use to get results. And so essentially it's manipulating a world that's already perceived as being my enemy. And the problem with enemy mode is when your brain is in it, it has shut off the circuits that would know that you weren't my enemy. It's already thinking enemy-like, and so it will always interpret other people as being your enemy, whether they're trying to help you or not. And most of us have had the bad experience of trying to help somebody only to have them turn on us and, attack us for trying to help them. And it's like, why don't you get it? I'm trying to help you here. Now, a brain in enemy mode is lacking the system that would say, I can really connect with you and have what might usually be called empathy, but I think it's more accurate to say compassion. Compassion says, I'm going to share any pain that you have. Empathy simply means I'm going to know what pain you have, but sociopaths use their empathy to hurt other people. Like, I know what's going to hurt you, and that's essentially what the intelligent enemy mode is saying. It's saying, well, one of us is going to hurt, and I'm going to use my intelligence to make sure it's you so that I get my way. And that's the intelligent enemy mode. And in that case, we really keep track very much of what bothers other people. I remember one person, it was a couple, and they were having a fight over the garbage, who was going to take out the garbage, and she would let it pile up for 2 weeks, and then she'd finally get so mad she'd carry it out. And when she wasn't in the room one time, he said to me, yeah, I always know it's going to upset her more than it will me, so I'll just let it go, and sooner or later she'll get upset enough that she'll take it out. And that's intelligent enemy mode.